Hi AP Capstone students, Mr. Muller here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about ethics and plagiarism. These are two things we need to keep in mind as you're conducting research and as you're writing either the research papers or the argumentative essays that you'll be required to look at in AP seminar. Hope you're excited. I'm excited. Let's get started. Now I want to remind you that some things I need here is I need all these notes written down. I need a summary of this information at the end of your notes. I need possible questions that you have written down, and I'd like to see those notes annotated. That will let me know that you have properly engaged with all of this content. Now, there is a lot of confusion about what is plagiarism, what is not. If it is common knowledge, if it is something that is pretty much everyone knows just because it's a common fact, that can't be plagiarized. For instance, if you're looking at the date the Declaration of Independence was approved, or if you're looking at who was the person who developed the polio vaccine. Well, that's common knowledge. It's just a basic answer to a question, and it's basic facts. However, you have to watch out for copyright infringement. This is really serious. In fact, you could be expelled from a university. You could have serious, even legal implications if you're in an academic field and you plagiarize or there's copyright infringement. It's really serious. Now, there are a couple of laws that protect copyright information. Another thing you need to note is that visual and audio performances could be copyrighted. So if you're going to be citing any sort of video or even using it in a research presentation, you need to make sure that you're not copyright infringing. Now, I don't think anyone's going to be doing that in this class, but I'm just letting you know, if you're going to be using a clip from a movie somehow in your research, well, that's copyright infringement. You can't do that. Now, let's talk about ethics. Obviously, you know what plagiarism is. We've talked about that in class. We need to talk about how you're going to be conducting this research in an ethical way. There are a lot of issues with research. You could be you have obviously academic misconduct and plagiarizing, but you can also have issues with experimentation or be misusing or abusing confidential information if you're doing interviews or focus groups or a survey. So we need to talk about some of these things. There are three guiding principles for conducting ethical research. I'm not going to read them all out, but I am going to emphasize a few of them. First, the idea of do not harm is incredibly important. You cannot subject people to harmful or hazardous materials. You also can't be working with harmful or hazardous materials. If you do, you have to submit an IRB paper, and you have to have this giant bureaucratic board approve what you're doing, which could take quite a long time, so you want to avoid doing that. Also, people need to be treated anonymously. They should have they should not be coerced into participating in your research. They could leave at any time, and they need to be protected. If they're younger, they need to have some sort of consent form that they are signing. Now, you need to secure these people's privacy. You need to be confidential. All of your research has to be anonymous. It can't have any names on it. It can't have any identifying features where someone could look at that research and say, oh, I know that the person that you interviewed is X because of whatever. And if you need approval for research, and you're especially going to do this in an academic field, in the professional field, but not here because you're not publishing anything, is you need to have an IRB approval, which is an internationally recognized research board that approves research that's going to be published. Now, the good thing is, yours isn't, so you don't have to worry about an IRB application. It's quite extensive, it takes a long time to get approved, you have to justify everything that you're doing, so that's why I tell you we're not publishing any of your research, because you'd have to go through this whole rigmarole. Now, just for your information, because some of you are going to be getting into academic fields that require research, an IRB is a particular committee that looks at research and decides if it's appropriate to conduct. If it's going to put people in harm's way, if there's going to be any psychological risk, not just physical risk as well. You can't mentally torture anyone. And they really assess the risk that's involved in research. So the question is, what does IRB consider risk? That's exercise outside of what you'd normally encounter in everyday life. It includes emotional stress. It includes any sort of physical contact with a harmful substance. And because a lot of you are going to be doing surveys with students, high school students, or even doing work with younger students, you need to make sure you're not exposing them to anything harmful, that you're not causing any psychological drama, and that everything's consented, and that what they're doing is completely volunteer-based, and everything's anonymous. So, I'll skip that there. Cool. So here's the rule of thumb. Don't come in contact with harmful and hazardous substances. If you have the scientist or the academic you're working with is going to make you fill out an IRB approval form, and it's going to take months. So just avoid working with harmful and hazardous materials, and do not experiment on yourself. Please don't experiment on yourself. You can't experiment on other human beings with anything other than engaging in surveys, focus groups, interviews, or questionnaires. A lot of you are doing surveys or interviews or focus groups, so we need to think about how we can do that ethically. So make sure that you include safety measures in your method. Make sure that when you're doing your inquiry proposal form, you're explaining how you're going to keep those private and anonymous. Do not collect identifiable information like names or distinguishing features or describing the person that you're interviewing. If you are doing surveys face-to-face, make sure you code all the information from the people that you're getting. Never publish identifiable information, and once you're done with your research, you have to destroy all the information for specific names and descriptions of people that you collected. The last thing I want to talk about are when consent forms are required. Because you're all going to be, for the most part, doing surveys and working with students here, you have to wonder, okay, when do I not need them sign some sort of consent form? And that is if your research is involving normal educational practices. So this is studies of perception, studies of thinking, different ideas of game theory or test development. And here's the key, where the investigator does not manipulate subjects' behavior, and it's not going to involve stress to the student. So if this is something that's already happening in a classroom and you're observing it, that's fine, but you cannot do something that manipulates the behavior of those students, and you cannot do anything that's going to create stress for them. So please keep that in mind. Thank you for listening. Hope you learned something you did not know before. Have a great day.